So hello everyone, it's Francisca here from the RESILIFE team. Welcome to our second Tea Talk. And the topic that we will be discussing today is about Black Lives Matter. And we brought this conversation to the RESILIFE events because we believe that this conversation has to happen everywhere, from the NHS to your family table, from the US to South America, Europe. It's not something that's only regarding the US, it's something that's more big than that. And we believe that every time that we can have a conversation about this, then we should do it. So the horrific death of George Floyd in the middle of a global pandemic has made the media address racism one more time. This is not something isolated, and it's not something that hasn't been happening just because the media doesn't show it. And it's very important to also mention other names like Breonna Taylor or Ahmaud Arbery. George Floyd is not the only one, unfortunately. And it doesn't only happen in the US. I'm going to discuss about that later, but sometimes, at least in South America, we assume that the US has more problems with racism than the rest of the world. So today you will be hearing from some students from King's, staff as well, and everybody that wants to share their knowledge and their opinions. And I think it's very important that we listen closely. And if we have any questions, please, the people that are watching on Instagram, just send a direct message, or you can join the Zoom link that is also in the bio on Instagram. If the speakers have any questions, they are going to let me know so they can interact with each other as well. And just to give you a heads up, we are going to be talking about the Black movement history, about how King's is taking responsibility to also address race issues, how this can be seen from different cultures and different perspectives as well, and also how this is embedded in our education. So we're going to start with Mia, and I'm going to let her present herself as well.
Hi, my name's Nia. I'm going into third year of my bachelor's degree in history and international relations, and I'm a Black student at King's. So I kind of just want to talk about Black Lives Matter and kind of everything that's been going on. So obviously since the murder of George Floyd on the 25th of May, there's been a lot of new attention on the Black Lives Matter movement. It began in America, highlighting the issue of police brutality, especially in relation to the Black people and the African American community. And so George Floyd's murder was kind of highlighted as the fact that it wasn't an isolated incident, and eventually a bigger picture was put into place, highlighting inherent injustices in like the justice system and other societal systems, mainly American systems. And basically the conversation began around systemic racism. And I want to clarify that it's a systemic rather than systematic, just because systematic refers to oppressive actions and behavior, which happens in an organized manner based on institutionalized laws and procedures, whereas systemic means oppression occurring throughout societies based on institutionalized laws and procedures, which is why there are calls, for example, to abolish the police system rather than reform it, because reformation does not necessarily answer to problems of systemic racism. Eventually, in the past couple of days, the Black and more or less weeks, the Black Lives Matter movement has grown beyond the US to Latin America, Asia, Europe, and even in the UK. There are Black Lives Matter protests in all American states and I think over 20 countries worldwide. So kind of to answer the question, why the outrage? So a lot of people have felt overwhelmed, and me included, by all of the information on social media and in the news, and you kind of don't even know where to look because there's so much of it. And I think a lot of people who've just started to talk about Black Lives Matter face this issue because for most Black people, this fight began long before George Floyd and will continue probably long after the hashtag Black Lives Matter is no longer trending. So I'd say a good place to start for anyone who's kind of looking to understand what's going on is to understand history and the struggle of Black people within your community, because I think regardless of where you are in the world, there are people that fight against racism and oppression everywhere. I mean, I'm living in Switzerland right now, and we just had a protest last week in support of Black Lives Matter. And I think it's so important to understand historical context to begin to understand the overdue frustration that we feel and we're experiencing today. And just to highlight that the Black Lives Matter movement is not so much political as it is more of a human rights one. And I think you can't really take that stance if you can't fully understand the historical context in which people are protesting. And I'd say a really important thing to highlight in relation to King's especially is the education system. So to look even before King's, the way we teach history at secondary school or primary school, especially in the UK, there's no kind of accountability for colonialism. The way we're taught, it kind of glorifies it. And I mean, it shows in like 52% of the British population believe colonialism was a good thing. Just because of the way it's taught, it kind of erases the involvement of Black people in building the societies and the cities that we live in today, but also in the way that they were treated. And when you erase that, it continues to oppress them in the lives that we live today, and hiding the atrocity of colonialism and consequently invalidates so many experiences of Black people in the UK, America, and other countries as well. And I think this is why people have called for kind of the reevaluation of people who we put on statues. For example, at Guy's campus, putting men on literal and figurative historical pedestals makes it difficult and almost impossible for them to be criticized, that it almost takes drastic measures to even begin having that conversation. And it kind of serves the idea that historical recounts are very selective and serve a certain agenda. So the biggest way to reform mindsets and the way we think about race and the conversations we have around race is to start with the education system. And just to kind of go back on the importance of access to higher education for Black people. I mean, I'm a student at King's, as I said before. I study a joint degree. So in international relations, I think I'm one of 3 or 4 Black students in a course of over 200. Within my joint degree, history and international relations, we're over 50 students. Not only am I the only Black person, I'm the only Black girl in that course. And I grew up very fortunate. I mean, I've had access to education, but that my life doesn't reflect the lives of a lot of Black people. And I think it's such a shame in this city, especially London, that has such intelligent Black students who just don't have access to higher education, and they're just being left out because they don't have the resources. And so I think King's needs to take accountability and make a much bigger effort, not only in enrolling more Black students, but protecting the Black students that it has already enrolled, and creating a very clear anti-racist environment as well. So, I mean, I could go on, but I just want to just go and encourage everybody to just kind of start reading and having conversations about racism, Black Lives Matter, systemic racism, because most of us are learning as we talk. Most of us are learning more as the day goes on. And so I'm going to name a few resources, but I mean, these resources are so easily accessible, and you can go on and do your own research to kind of see what you like. But in a more, I've kind of divided them into 3 categories. So what you can do actively, I mean, I'd say support Black businesses, donate to funds, raise awareness, inspire conversations, but also support your Black friends and people in your circle who are having probably a very difficult emotional time dealing with everything. Also, there are a lot of volunteer opportunities to help in terms of books or movies or shows. Some books I suggest are Why I No Longer Talk to White People About Race. The title is relatively misleading about what the book is about, but it talks a lot about Black British history, which is something I feel is not spoken about enough. The Hate You Give, White Fragility, Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism, How to Be Anti-Racist. And in terms of movies and shows, I'd say When They See Us, Dear White People, it's on Netflix, it's really good. The Hate You Give, Selma, 13th, Rest in Power, all of these. And I'd say if you go on to find your own, try find works that are by Black people, just to continue to support Black people in this kind of conversation with everything that's been going on. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mia. I just wanted to complement what you were just saying, especially for white people, that we don't need to be, like, we need to be in this, like we cannot remove ourselves from the equation just because we are not experiencing the same. And also that it is a privilege to learn about racism and not experience it every day since probably you were born. Just to quote one activist that was in the documentary, The 13th Amendment, that is from the US, he was mentioning that who we are today probably has to do with the decisions that our parents and grandparents took in the past. If you are white, and if you are Black, probably you are like the generations and generations that couldn't make a decision, because this goes way back. It's history. It's not something that is new, that is happening only in 2020. Even for some people that's like obvious, for some others it's not, because sometimes we don't see it face to face, because it's something that has been going on for centuries. And just to let you know, one initiative that one King's student had, she wanted to be with us today, but she's doing her placement right now, so she asked me to share that. So she's a white student, and she just started a book club to learn more about racism. And one of the books that they are reading is, for example, White Privilege from Calwan Bhopal, The New Jim Crow, or reading about James Baldwin. So that's one of the initiatives that you can have, like as an individual with your group of friends, because sometimes we feel that if we don't know everything, then we cannot act. And I think that's very important, that we need to start where we are, because sometimes we have this huge expectation that we are going to become anti-racist for tomorrow, but we need to start today. We need to start thinking about how we are in the middle of all of this, maybe without our knowledge, but yeah, we need to learn more about the history of different cultures and different races. And I just wanted to share her Instagram. She asked me to share her Instagram. So it's Avi with double B and a Y, C227. So it's Avi with double B, Y, C227. So she's starting a book club, and she has some people joining her. And of course, she's more than happy that a lot of people are joining in, because I think it's also good to do this in community. Like Nia was saying, it's so overwhelming sometimes to just sit alone in this pandemic and see images and videos, and sometimes feel that we don't have nothing to do, that we cannot help. And I think doing this by community is something that can give us that strength and that power as well. So I don't know if you have any last comments, Nia?
No, I think that covered it all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for the knowledge that you share with us. Now we are going to talk to Zoe. She is going to talk about Kings and her role. She's part of the Race Equality Network. Zoe, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Perfect. So now the stage is yours.
Oh, thank you.
So
I'm Zoe. I am the Institute of Psychiatry, Psychology and Neuroscience, so IOPPN's Culture, Diversity and Inclusion lead. So my role is to lead all sort of diversity and inclusion work and help give that strategic direction of that work within the faculty. And I work very closely with our two academic leads, Professor Anne McNeil, who's the Vice Dean for Culture, Diversity and Inclusion, and our co-chair of our D&I team, Professor Stephanie Hatch. So that's sort of my role. So a bit about me. I grew up in Australia. I spent a lot of my 20s traveling around, spending lots of time in lots of different countries, and ended up in London about 4 years ago. And so, yeah, that's my background and my cultural perspective there. So for IOPPN, so focusing a little bit more on the race equality work going on there, rather than King's more broadly, but I can touch a little bit on that. So we've been doing lots of work for a long time, quite intensely since about 2015, 2016. And that was sort of around the same time as King's applied for its first Race Equality Charter application, and it got its Bronze Award. And out of that work, there was a King's-wide race equality network that sort of used to travel around all of the different campuses and things like that, but there didn't always seem to be enough or lots of people coming to those meetings, so eventually it sort of just landed more at IOPPN and at Denmark Hill, because that's where most of the people were attending the meetings. The REN, so the Race Equality Network, we do a lot of different things. The sort of core aims of it is just to raise awareness of race equality through events and activities and initiatives throughout the year. It's also really key on saying that everyone has a race, so it's not just Black people that have a race, it's everyone that has a race, and so therefore to have race equality, it's really important that everyone gets involved and recognises how the structures may benefit some people and may have negative impacts on other people, and recognising all the different types of races and ethnicities, and trying to facilitate some of those conversations. So the network's quite active during October for Black History Month, and we sort of try and have quite a few events during that month. But we are also quite active in celebrating Lunar New Year. And we have, we're sort of quite open as a network, and so we also encourage people, if there is an event or celebration related directly to where they're from or their race or ethnicity, to come along to one of our meetings with an idea, and then the network will help support that. A good example was around Iranian New Year one year, and someone said, how do we celebrate this? How do we raise awareness of this? And they came up with an idea, and we helped support them. One of our most recent events, which was quite well attended, was focusing on the Indian involvement in World War II, with around VE Day back in March, and sort of trying to highlight all of these different things that, like Nia said, that aren't highlighted or aren't taught in sort of usual, the sort of standard curriculum that most people experience. At IOPPN, we also have what we call our D&I champion, so they cover all these lots of different areas, and at the moment our race equality champion at IOPPN is Dr. Renee Romeo. And so she's quite sort of where the REN is about raising awareness and trying to engage people in conversation. Renee tends to be more about that strategic direction, about how do we start decolonizing our curriculum? What does an inclusive curriculum actually mean? How can we move towards that? And working with our Dean of Education as well about and our inclusive education staff partner about how do we do that? What does it look like? What support do our lecturers and academics need, and program leads need to think about their curriculum and what they're teaching? The other thing that we've been doing an awful lot about at IOPPN is really encouraging people to have race discussions. And talk with their teams and in their departments, and trying to trying to break the sort of barrier that there appears to be around a lot of these conversations, and saying that actually it doesn't matter if you get it wrong it's actually more important that you're having a go and you're trying to engage in the conversation and you are trying to learn, and trying to make people aware of small microaggressions and how that might make people feel, and how to avoid them, and how other ways to have these conversations. And we still hear from our staff and students quite regularly if one student brings up race, or saying, hang on, where are BME people in your imagery or in your course content, or how does that impact that bit of research or that idea impact differently on BME people. We still have teachers that will look around the room and just instinctively look for that BME person to answer that question. And so we're trying to do a lot of work about going, that's not okay. You also have to answer these questions, and it's your responsibility to bring that in into your course. And just because you're doing statistics or just because you're doing wet lab work doesn't actually mean that you shouldn't be having these conversations and be engaging in these conversations, and around the education and things like that. And sort of lastly, reflecting on the last couple of weeks, it's been good in some ways, because all of a sudden there's this external force that's driving a lot of momentum within the faculty, of people sort of almost finally realizing that talking about race is actually really important, and it's really important to be having these conversations and creating space for these conversations and discussions, and just being afraid in case you say the wrong thing isn't an excuse anymore. So that's been quite good. And it's been really positive because we've had quite a few different spaces. We've had a staff open forum, we've had a couple of student ones. I think most of our about half of our departments are also having these conversations and discussions. And so it's also been really great because more people are starting to engage in the conversation. So we are starting, which means that on one hand, we're just sort of seeing just how much work we still have to do, and how much there is just so much to do. But then on the other hand, we're starting to get people to hear those conversations, whereas a month ago it was a struggle to get them to hear that, whereas now they're starting to hear that, which is really kind of a positive step. But although that's all positive, one thing I'm really conscious of and thinking about how we can keep moving that forward is that in a month, when the sort of the initial hype of all the protests and things like that starts dying down, how do we keep the same level of engagement going forward? Because it's not just going to change overnight. We're not just going to click our fingers and take down a few statues and that's it. We have to do a lot more work and a lot more sustained work. So I'm kind of doing a lot of thinking about how do I keep those conversations going. We also kind of from a faculty level, I'm also trying to do a lot of work of and highlighting the issues within faculty and what we need King's as a wider institution to do. So as much as I can drive a lot of things within my faculty, there's certain things that also stop and that I just can't change without that bigger push from King's as an entire institution, and that support there. And then I just thought I'd finish by sort of touching on a few things that have come up during the conversations we've had over the last few weeks. And I think they're quite relevant to how we move forward, and just why some people really struggle to have conversations about race. The first one is that sort of what we were hearing is the need for additional support and recognition that the current protests and news coverage and media, and particularly over Instagram and social media, can be quite triggering to a lot of people, particularly Black people, and the need for recognizing that and recognizing the impact that that's going to have on people, particularly students studying for exams, and that concentration and that sort of impact that that might be having, and there not necessarily being enough recognition of that and how that's affecting people. What we did immediately to sort of try and address that is that we developed a SharePoint site, and so that's available to anyone at King's, student, staff, and I can share the link to that, and it's a Black Lives Matter page on our community engagement corner, which was developed initially for COVID and support across the health faculties. And so on that page, we've now listed a whole lot of BME-centred organisations that provide that specialist mental health support to people and to signposting them. And also on that page, we've also tried to raise awareness of the sort of mental health and psychological impacts some of the stuff that's going on might be having on people, and to try and make sure people are aware of that. Then the other thing that's coming up is around education, and just how much there is to do around educating people. We had a open forum yesterday, and one of the questions that was asked was, what is structural racism? So in 2020, we are still having to talk to people about what these sort of things are, how they impact, what their how they manifest and things like that. And so on the Black Lives Matter page that we created, we have a lot of links to how to be an ally, videos explaining structural racism, impacts. There's a few movie clips in there that articulate what people might be feeling, and how racism manifests. We've got a lot of articles, sort of lots of information about how the Black Lives Matter and why it's come about and why it's so important now, and trying to put it into the wider context. And so there's heaps of resources there that that's hoping to start educating people around those things, and but also giving BME people the opportunity to say, I'm not going to educate you on race at the moment. I don't have the energy for that. That's not my burden to carry right now. Go away to this page, have a look at these videos yourself, go and read about what white privilege is, go and read about what structural racism is, and all of these things. Go and get that basic information yourself, and then come back and we can have a conversation about how I need to be supported in that moment, or how other people need to be supported. So it's a much more productive conversation to go forward, because, and I will finish on this point, the other thing that is very clear is just the sheer burden that a lot of particularly Black people at the moment, but also the wider BME community, are feeling about. And this is particularly coming from our BME staff, where they are underrepresented across King's, particularly in senior levels. They've had to work twice as hard, if not kind of 100 times harder than their white peers just to get where they are. And now they're having to talk to and explain what racism is at the very basic level to their white peers who could just Google it in all honesty. But then they're also being having a lot more contact with students, where the students just want to, or junior members of staff just want to talk to someone that looks like them. And so there's all this sort of additional burden. And so in my role, I'm very conscious of this is my job. I get paid to do diversity and inclusion work. I am also white. So making sure that I can take as much burden away so they can keep focusing on their research and their work. But then there's also that sort of balance of making sure that our BME voices are being heard and being amplified. And so I don't think we necessarily always get that balance right, but that's sort of the focus at the moment, to make sure that we are supporting everyone and using the voices that we have, and recognising that privilege to amplify the voices that some people may not have. I'll finish there.
Thank you so much, Zoe. Just for the people that are joining in, Zoe was talking about the Race Equality Network in King's, especially in IUPP, the Institute of Psychiatry and Psychology and Neuroscience. I think you cover a lot of very important topics. I just wanted to stop to point out again that it's very common that people, for example, now that Black people, especially if they are a minority during a class, are instantly becoming like the ambassador of the whole Black community. So everyone, since the staff, the professor, or the other classmates, expect them to feel that like not knowledge about race. So, okay, you're Black, that's because race is important for you. And it's something that it should be important for everyone. And I think it's a very strong burden, because especially if you're receiving a lot of social media posts, so you are overwhelmed, then you have the pandemic, then you have your own exams, you have your own life, you have your own feelings of discrimination maybe, and in top, like you said, you need to explain to every white person, and you need to try to explain them why this is important, not only to you, but for them as well. So I think that also with what Nia was saying, like the information is there. The website Black Lives Matter that the IOP has is also very important, because it puts all the information together, because of course in social media you will find everything. So it's important to have some guidance, but then there's a lot of work that you can do on your own, or like I was saying, in a community, like the book club that the student was suggesting as well. And I have one last question, if you can help us, like if a student feels discriminated at King's, what can he or she do? Who do they talk to?
Yeah, so it is, I wish that answer was a lot more simpler than what it currently is. It's slightly different in different faculties, depending on the sort of D&I networks and support and teams that's set up in different faculties. There is also the wider context that's important here, because if there's an issue around race, it falls under bullying and harassment, and there's a much bigger piece across King's to address some of the gaps in our bullying and harassment at the moment. So there's lots of work going on, but it's going on behind the scenes and things like that, so it's not as straightforward. Immediately you can contact the King's Student Services. I think there's the Student of Concern form. For anyone in IOPPN, feel free to reach out to myself or even if you're at a different faculty but do have some questions for me, my email is zoe.kennedy at kcl.ac.uk, so feel free to reach out to me. Within IOPPN and Folsom, so that's the Faculty of Life Sciences and Medicine, we have school or departmental reps, so that information is available on the intranet. I think if you just sort of search D&I rep Folsom or IOPPN, that link should come up. You can also send an email to King's Equality, Diversity and Inclusion team. That is diversity at kcl.ac.uk. You can contact your personal tutors or your lecturers or other teachers you have contact with. There are also senior tutors and other education points in different faculties. I'm not sure what they all are across all of King's. So there's that point as well. And then there's also the student conduct and appeal. So if you want to make a complaint that's more formal, that's a process for students.
Thank you so much, Zoe. I just wanted to pass a notice. The 18th of June, there is going to be a meeting called Black Students Talk, that is for and by Black students. It's going to be a call on Zoom, and if you want to participate, you just have to write to the following email. So it's hello@blackpeopletalk.co.uk. So it's going to be the 18th of June from 3 to 5 p.m. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just on that, sorry, I should have mentioned it, but that's going to be running weekly, and it is a space for Black students specifically, because as great as some of these other discussions that we are starting to have around race that I mentioned earlier, there is still the point of recognizing the particularly Black students want that space just for themselves, with that sort of shared experience and that safe space. And so the IOPPN D&I team is supporting creating that space, because we recognise that it's really important that there is an all Black space that's safe for people to share their experiences.
Yeah. So if you have any doubts, you can write to the King's, if you want, the King's RESILIFE Instagram, if you have doubts, to email Zoe or to check the Black Lives Matter page. Thank you, Zoe. I don't know if Jasmine is present. Jasmine?
Hiya.
Hello, Jasmine.
Hi.
So Jasmine is going to talk about the importance of sharing experience, and yeah, the stage is yours as well.
Sure. So hi everyone, I'm Yasmin. I'm from Humans of KCL. So we're inspired by Humans of New York. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it. But essentially what it is, it's this big platform, primarily on Instagram, where they share stories from a diverse range of people from anywhere. So it is called Humans of New York. So, you know, it will be people around, you know, New York and the United States, but it could also be, you know, anywhere in the world. And so Humans of KCL is basically a smaller version of that. We do the same thing. We just share stories from the KCL community. And again, it can be anyone. It can be, you know, someone that we bump into on campus who we just sort of stop and we talk to. Or, you know, they might reach out to us because they have a story that they think will be valuable to other people, so they want to share it. And so in relation to Black Lives Matter, and why sharing stories like this is so important for movements like BLM, is because it's kind of in the name. You're sort of humanizing everyone by sharing sort of anecdotal stories about their lives. So what Humans of KCL did recently is we made a call for submissions from the Black community specifically, so that they could come forward with stories, if they were comfortable, of when they have been discriminated against, whether that's, you know, subtly or, you know, outrightly. It's sort of like Zoe mentioned, sort of giving them a space to come forward and share those experiences. And I guess the main purpose of that is to sort of shed light on the kinds of microaggressions and perhaps not so microaggressions that Black people face all the time, that, you know, maybe white people don't face at all, that they don't need to even think about. And again, sort of like what we were just saying, you know, Black people and people sort of within minority groups, they have a heavier weight on their shoulders, because, you know, as well as worrying about, you know, their life and you know, their work and everything else that everyone else worries about, they also have this, you know, racial weight, because of the way people, because of the way the system plays against them as a racial group. So what Humans of KCL is aiming to do with that call for submissions, and just generally the sort of main aim of the page, is to share people's stories so that we can sort of humanize people that maybe you would have judged if you'd seen on the street, or if you'd maybe seen on campus, because, you know, I suppose whether you like it or not, and I think this is the harsh truth that we're sort of facing now, we've all been conditioned to have, you know, certain biases to varying extents, depending on the family you were brought up in, or, you know, whatever you've been conditioned to think by the media, etc. There are so many, you know, sources that can sort of condition you. And, you know, we're now tackling that. This movement has sort of, you know, brought our attention to these, you know, preconceptions we have about people from different races. But what Humans of KCL is trying to do is, you know, share these stories so that we actually see, you know, humans from different races as humans like the rest of us, whether you're, you know, Black, Asian, from what, you know, whatever race you're from, you are at the end of the day part of the human race, and everyone has their own individual story, and they should all be valued and cherished to the same degree as each other, because everyone's story is valid and everyone's story is important. And then when you're sharing stories from, you know, a diverse range of people, you realize that, because you realize everyone is actually the same. Everyone has their story. Everyone has gone through something in their life that has shaped them to become the human that they are, and it's not dependent on race. And in that way, you sort of equalize people. You know, a human becomes not their race, but they just become a human, you know, a fellow human on this earth. So I guess, you know, in a nutshell, Humans of KCL is just working to bring everyone together and to sort of level out the playing field, just through, you know, anecdotes and stories. Storytelling can be a very powerful thing, and it's really easy to sort of look past it. You know, I mean, it's, I guess maybe you could say that just posting a story on Instagram is a very, you know, easy and trivial thing to do. But actually, when you really look into the purpose of that, and what reading a story from about someone's life from a different, you know, racial group, when you think about the kind of impact that can have on you, the kind of emotions it can stir up in you, actually storytelling is so powerful. And what we're hoping to, the way we're hoping to contribute to the you know, to BLM is to use the power of storytelling to sort of bring these issues to light, and then hopefully, as Zoe was saying, is to, you know, beyond this spike in awareness, to actually maintain it. I came across a post today on Instagram that was talking about sort of this movement and many movements as sort of a wake-up call, but we've had this wake-up call, and that's great when our, you know, attention has been brought to the problem, but now it's a matter of maintaining that attention and taking action at a sort of sustained level, and, you know, not just sort of buying into almost a trend, which this definitely shouldn't be. You know, this should be a massive shift in perspective, whether or not you consider yourself racist or not. You know, I think this is a shift in perspective, in that it is no longer good enough to be not racist. You have to be anti-racist. I'm sure you've heard that a lot. But what Humans of KCL is trying to do is trying to sort of make that more concrete by sharing their stories and making sure they're heard, because the more we're reminded of the struggles that they've been through, the more we are aware that it's a problem and that we have a role in fighting against the problem. So I guess to sum up, Humans of KCL is basically just, we're trying our best as a sort of student platform, it's student-led, to help people find their voices and to allow them to express themselves if maybe they haven't ever before, or maybe they've just not found a safe space to do so. We're hoping that Humans of KCL can be their safe space. And that's why we've got our call for submissions. So, you know, anyone who's watching right now, if you do have a story to tell, you know, you don't need to be from a specific community, you can be from any community. But, you know, in light of sort of BLM, if you do have a story to tell, please come forward. We keep things as confidential as you want us to. You can remain anonymous. You can sort of personalize it to your liking, but sharing stories is a really powerful thing. So if you do have something to share and you think it will help this movement sort of stay alive, and it will sort of keep everyone awake and willing to take action, then it's definitely worth coming forward. So please do.
Thank you so much for all of that. I agree with you that we need to keep this movement alive, and that we as a community have to become active listeners. A lot of like content on social media had made especially white people feel more aware, and they feel that they need to do a lot of things. Okay, so I need to go to protests, I need to donate, I need to create a sign and go outside. But I think something very important that sometimes it gets lost in the way is like, have you asked your friends, that your Black friends, how are they feeling with this? How it was for them to move maybe to the UK if they're not from here? Because that part of listening to them and not only say, I feel guilty because I'm white, I need to do something. It's not about you, it's not about us, it's about the Black community right now. And I think that's also with the phrase that Black lives matter, and it's not all of life matters. It's because we need to focus on the one that's been hurting for centuries, and the injustice that the Black movement and the Black community have been facing for 100 years. 400 years or even more. It's something that is something that we don't understand, and that's something very important, that we need to acknowledge that we are ignorant in a lot of things, and by listening we are going to be more close to understand. And if we get more close to understand, then we are going to stop normalizing the injustice, like, because we don't live it every day. So I was hearing Twitch. He is a Black American dancer, and he was sharing in Helen DeGeneres' program that parents of Black kids have to teach them things that parents from white kids don't. And I think from that start, we are experiencing culture and we are experiencing life very differently. Because there are some things that parents don't feel they need to teach their white kids, but they do need to teach their Black kids, to protect them, to let them know about history. But something happens in the other place that white people are not taught to respect Black people. It's just like, oh, we are equal. And that's the aim, to be equal. But we cannot erase the past and just say, okay, from today everyone's equal, because there is a huge depth with the Black community, not only in the US, around the world. And I also, one point that you were saying about the stories is that for one person to hold the weight of the whole history of their parents, their ancestors, it's too hard for one person or for one community. And that's why it doesn't have to rely only in the shoulders of the Black community. It has to be in all of us. And I think sometimes something that it can be considered simple, like sharing a little bit of your story, can help this movement, like you say, to remain alive. So I invite you, all of you, to check the stories, and if you are comfortable to share some of yours, please visit Humans of Kings.
On that note, sorry, Fran, sorry to interrupt. Yasmin, I know you mentioned about it being available on Instagram. Where else could the students go to get the information? Because I know some students don't necessarily have Instagram.
So we are on Facebook as well. The two accounts are sort of linked. So we are just Humans of King's College London on both Instagram and Facebook, at HOKCL on Instagram. So we're on those two platforms. Apart from that, you know, those, because it's sort of inspired by Humans of New York, which is mainly sort of an Instagram platform, that's sort of our main area. And, you know, you're right, not everyone has Instagram. The stories are obviously still accessible. So you can sort of view the page just by looking up the Instagram page, you know, on the internet. But yes, those are the main two platforms. It's literally just Instagram.
You also have an email, right?
We do have an email, yeah. So, you know, that can be used to share your stories if you want to get in touch with us that way. So that's humansofkcl@gmail.com. So feel free to get in touch that way as well.
Zoe, you have a question for Jasmine?
Yeah, thanks. I just had a quick question about if there's any thought about collating all of these stories in some way. And I think they're really important, particularly given they're sort of focusing on students, about making sure we're communicating that to staff and particularly senior leaders and senior decision makers, to kind of be able to say, this is what, kind of be able to try and communicate, this is who our students are, not just the sort of the key statistics of this percentage is female and this percentage is from BME backgrounds, or this is international, but whether there's a way to kind of pull them into a storybook or a printed version or something like that, that could sit around in that you could send to all of the vice presidents and principal, and have them sitting in their kind of waiting rooms. And obviously this is post sort of remote working, but having it sitting around to make that the people who wouldn't necessarily go on at Instagram or know you can access Instagram without having an account, that those stories are connecting.
Yeah, so we've tried to do sort of something similar to that before. So for example, we'd partner with the student union, and this was for Wellbeing Week at the time. And we sort of put up some of our stories. We sort of printed them out, and we sort of put them on easels. And so you'd have the picture of the person and their story sort of next to it. So we'd create sort of a more tangible experience, because you're right, you know, not everyone has access to Instagram, or, you know, is as tech savvy as, you know, the average the average young person. So yeah, that's definitely something we've discussed as well. We've always said that it would be awesome if we could put something together that's more accessible to a range of people, because everyone should be included in you know, the storytelling process or in just listening to the stories. So yeah, it is an idea we're working on. Of course, you know, it does have to be a sort of post remote working thing, but hopefully at some point in the future we'll be able to do that. And I guess the aim with Humans of KCL is just to sort of keep expanding the network, because the more people you can reach, and the more people who hear the stories will ultimately expand the sort of the reach we can have with people generally, and the impact we can have on people, and hopefully we can play a small part in changing people's perspectives on race. So the wider our community, the wider our reach, the more impact we can have. So yeah, that will definitely be something we'll be considering in the future. And just a correction on the email, I did get it wrong earlier. It's kclhumans@gmail.com.
Yeah. Jess, do you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, I wanted to just ask a few, like 2 questions. I'm on the Instagram. I'm just looking at the Instagram now.
Cool.
So I just saw that so the submissions are for people who have experienced racism or like discrimination at uni. I'm just conscious that if people want to remain anonymous, how is that going to go about? And like somebody mentioned, it's sad that these stories exist anyway. So what is going to be the follow-up process? How are these stories of racism going to stop in the future? And I think it's important that there's some sort of like escalation for people who may come with like very sad stories to tell.
Yeah, I 100% agree. These stories shouldn't exist in the first place. Sort of linking to what I was saying earlier, the storytelling process is supposed to act as sort of a teaching process in itself. It's supposed to, I guess the aim is to share stories that will have an emotional impact on the person who's reading it. So hopefully, you know, if you are someone who maybe didn't consider race as, you know, your problem to deal with in the past, maybe after sort of reading someone's own personal story, it shifts your sort of role in it. You know, there is sort of an emotional reaction to their story, which hopefully, not all the time, you know, it depends on the person, of course, and how willing they are to take action, but hopefully it will encourage people to take action, or at least it will make them more willing to do so. You know, in contrast to maybe if they hadn't heard the story before, maybe they wouldn't have even thought of it. Or, you know, sometimes there can be elements to someone's story or that particular story that really resonates with someone, not at a racial level, but maybe on a completely different level. It could be that, you know, someone faced similar discrimination, you know, not because they're Black, but for whatever other reason. And, you know, they can kind of identify with the story that way. And when you identify with something emotionally, you're more willing to take action. Because I think when you realize that actually that kind of thing has happened to me, you become sort of emotionally invested in it, and so that makes you want to take action. So I guess in answer to your question, the storytelling process, yes, it doesn't do anything directly in the sense that, you know, you're not donating to a cause, for example, but raising awareness in itself should help with the education process, re-educating people, because obviously, you know, like we were discussing earlier, we haven't been educated enough in this area. So that's sort of the main aim. And like I say, we want to expand Humans of KCL. We want to make it a bigger platform, and hopefully with that, as it grows, we'll be able to have more of a direct impact on these kinds of movements in the future. So that would essentially be my answer to your question. I think you asked another question before that. What was that?
Yeah, go, Jess. Don't worry.
If it's going to be escalated, like, do you, like, is there, like, will the stories, for example, if someone wants to share a story but also wants to actually report it, will that be an option?
Right. Oh, I see. So if they've experienced sort of racial injustice and they want to report it as sort of, right, okay. Yeah, you know, I guess it depends what point, sort of at what point that person is in that journey. Some people have already reported it, some people haven't. It's, I guess ultimately it's their choice. If they wanted us to support, we would obviously, you know, we'd be willing to support, whether that was just through sharing the story, or if they asked for other sort of other resources from us, we would obviously do our best to participate and actually help them to report it. Because we're a student-led, we're not an official society, we're sort of a student-led platform. So we are essentially students who believe in this cause. So us helping them to report the story would be sort of like a student helping a student kind of situation. So I guess just as human beings on this team, passionate about sort of, you know, sharing stories, of course we'd be willing to help. So any, you know, if anyone were, not anyone, you know, no one has yet, because I think, you know, they would have sort of already reported it, which is great if they've taken that action already. But if they haven't and they wanted us to help, of course, you know, as their friend, I suppose you could say, we would support that.
I think it would be a very interesting idea, maybe in the future, to have the links of like for example, if somebody gives you a story and you feel worried about this person, that you're able to reach to them and say, thank you for sharing your story. Of course, I don't know if you have taken action, so that's up to you, but here are the links if you want to contact like free counseling, or if you need to report, here they are. So maybe you can help them go to the right direction, not necessarily you need to do it. But sometimes people will feel easier to reach to you than to reach to a counselor, for example. So you can be the intermediary.
Yeah, no, exactly. We've been doing that. We've been sort of sharing what other societies have been doing, sharing sort of petitions that people can sign, sharing, basically sort of collating all of the resources that different societies have been putting together, sharing them on our stories, sharing them where we can, so that, like you say, we can direct people in the right direction, and hopefully, you know, actively fight against racial injustice.
Freya, I think you were going to say something.
No, I was going to say, and this is the beauty of holding a podcast or an event like this, is that, you know, Zoe mentioned, you know, if people need help or want somewhere to either take it further, and then you've got you guys as the support network from a peer's point of view. And like for me, and when Fran mentioned doing something like this is the beauty of hosting these events with different people involved, because we can pull all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds together and just build this community of support and networking, and, you know, really breathe that philosophy of like everybody's equal and everyone's here for one another, and which is why, you know, we love doing things like this.
Thank you, Freya. Is Nafisa around? I don't know if I'm saying your name correctly, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
Hello. So you are the vice president of the postgrads, right?
Yep.
So stage is yours now.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm the vice president for postgraduates at KCL. But I'm here to talk about something a little different, which is like talking about Black Lives Matter and racism in terms of being Southeast Asian. And it's something that you don't hear a lot. A lot of times when you hear like racism or anti-Blackness, there is an association that like historically white people tend to do this, but then it's very important to address the racism that goes on within Southeast Asians, and this might not be in a very obvious way, but there are patterns and there is a behavior that you can identify doing such. One of the things that, like, oftentimes an Asian person, like, they won't think that they are being racist, and a lot of times perhaps their intention is right. They're not trying to be racist, and they're trying to be respectful. But then when you start to dig in more and when you start to do the research, as some of the resources that was provided by Nia, and you can find the ones on social media, you tend to realize that what you say is actually inappropriate. And this has happened to me personally, like certain things where later I found out that that was wrong, and it hits you quite hardly. It hits, like, it gives you a shock, which is when you start to realize. And I think that's why I thought like this would be quite important to talk about. One of the things that we see in Southeast Asia is the matter and discussion of colorism. There is a huge discussion about how fair is someone, or, you know, how dark is someone. And when this is engraved in the discussions of Southeast Asians, but when you think about it, it is very offensive, not to mention the skin bleaching industry that is highly, like, there is so much money being made and there is so much advertisement for that, where, like, you know, Bollywood actresses are the face of skin bleaching industries and products, and they are so toxic and so harmful that they should actually be banned from the market. Like, you're literally putting bleach on your face. You wouldn't do that in a normal day. Why is it that there is this culture and there is this nature of pointing out someone's color and commenting on that when it's actually so inappropriate? And how can we address that? But that's just one thing, and one of the issues that are within the Southeastern Asian population, not to mention there are so many more. Now, a lot of people might say that, one, that they didn't know that they were racist, but then the next thing that they might say is that they will start to play the blame game, which is, oh, this is how I grew up, this is what I have heard from my family around, or this is what I've been seeing all the time. And it's sort of engraved in your mind. And they're not nice. They're not nice comments. And when someone starts to play that blame game, it's really not enough to say, this is how I grew up. Because when you grow up, you start to see these things. It is ultimately your own responsibility to unlearn what you already know. Because there is power in learning, but there is a greater power in unlearning when it's not the right thing. So it is about unlearning and actually learning the real truth, the real history of what happened. And we can learn about it and we can talk about it. So, like, us as a community of Asians, we need to talk about this with our friends and with our families. And it is very important to have these healthy discussions, because if we don't talk, if we don't learn, then when are we going to do this, or how are we going to learn and address this and actually, like, come to a solution? So it is quite important that we do come together. Not only that, I mean, before I get onto that point, I did mention that we should talk about it with our friends and with our families. One thing that happens a lot within Southeastern Asians and other cultures is where you want to point something out respectfully to the elders, and they don't like that. They think that they're right, and that is a challenge that we face. So how do we respectfully address that and say that this is nothing to do with generation, but this is actually to do with humans? It's about one human, and like it's given importance to a race of humans. Sorry, given the same importance as everyone has, given the privilege that we all have, it's nothing, like it's not a lot to ask for. Why is it that we have let the systemic oppression and the systemic racism get into us, where right now we are trying to reverse that, and you are struggling to listen to us? And that one would be very key to address. So we can do that initially, where we have those discussions as much as possible, where we can like talk about it with our friends, family, communities, and show them, like, you know, an example of, or a perspective, like, what if this happened to us? What would happen? And once we do learn that, or, you know, alongside, we need to look out for our Black friends, our Black circle, and make sure that they're okay, because this is such a hard time that I can't imagine. I have the privilege where I can't imagine how hard, how difficult this is for them. And we need to be there, like, to make sure that we, you know, we support them, that we take care of them, we look after them, we seek out for them. Not only that, but also be allies, because as Asians, like a little bit in comparison to white people, we also are from another race. We are like a lot of times the ultimate terminology is like, oh, Asians, like we are from that background. Can we like use that and be allies to make sure that our Black friends, our Black members, our Black people also get the same rights, the equity as well across every sector? And this might be in our system, or this might be in higher education, in the curriculum we learn, in healthcare, you name it. Everywhere you will see there is this inequality or this inequity. So how can we be allies to address that? So I think we can do so much more, because we believe that we're quite a strong community, and we can definitely do so much more than what is being done right now.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience as well. And it's very important to have in mind that this is not something local. It's not happening only in the US or in the UK. It's happening all around the world as well. And I think something very important that you mentioned is that sometimes in our cultures, we grew up believing that this is normal. So that you were mentioning, like, I found out after that what was happening to me was wrong, because in that context, it was something acceptable or something that happens. And I think, especially if you're thinking in the old generations, they have been living in that normality for so much longer, that now when they're exposed to change, it's very hard for them to understand that things can change. That doesn't invalidate the past. That doesn't mean that they are ignorant. But it's so hard to open to something new when you believe that what you have been doing is the right thing. Everything else is the wrong thing. So it's a point that's very difficult to have. And some activists have been saying, especially regards racism, that this anger that we can be feeling, especially the Black community, it has to pair up with action to create. Because if not, it can be something that consumes you, because you can be super angry. People sometimes won't listen to you, or they will say that you're wrong, so you will become more angry. And I think when you combine that with the action to create, you can become more constructive and help to deconstruct, like you were saying, like to unlearn things. It's very important, because we have learned for centuries to behave like this. We have been learned how a Black man should be treated, a Black woman as well. and religions as well. Like everything can come together, and we have so much stereotypes that we accept that normality because it's like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and there is this also like unconscious expectation that it should be Black people that should teach us what's right, what's wrong. That's absolutely not the case. They're facing such a difficult time right now. It is ultimately our responsibility. The resources are there, and there is no excuse. We have social media, we have the internet, we have Google, where there is unlimited resource that we can access. I think at that time, rather than asking, teach me or help me what to do, it's more like, I'm here to help you, but I'm also learning independently so that I can support you even better.
Yeah, I think that's very important. That's why we are here, and I hope spaces like this continue. So thank you so much. And if you have any questions after, please welcome. I'm going to talk a little bit about the experience in South America. Of course, it's going to be my vision of that. So if anybody has questions or anybody has any comments, please go for it. I think what big myth that we have in South America, especially in the Spanish-speaking countries, is that we are not racist. We cannot be racist because we are Latinos. And that's something that is like going in every circle. Like I was saying, like since I was a little girl, we were looking to the US, and the US had the problem of racism. We didn't have it. And in my case, because I'm from Chile, it was because we didn't have a lot of migration there. So we were not exposed to different cultures. So we thought that this was beyond us. But it's not. Especially now we have more migration from people from Colombia, from Haiti, and from Brazil. And they have different skin color. And that has had a lot of repercussions in how they are treated, especially in healthcare. So we had a problem with migration probably 10 years ago, because we didn't have a policy. So everybody that wanted to come to Chile, they just needed to do some paperwork and then they can come in. But then because of the struggles that Haiti was happening, we have a lot of people coming from Haiti. And the way that the authorities react to that was very, very poorly. We have the case of a young 28-year-old woman. Her name was Joan Florbel. So she had a little baby, and she was walking the street, and her husband was robbed. So she was like, she didn't know what to do, and because of how her life is, she wanted to go and help her husband, but she had a baby. So she went to the social services office, and she asked if they could take care of her baby while she was helping her husband. Because of how our culture is, the government interpreted that as she was abandoning her child, so she was put into prison. And she was beaten, and because she was screaming that she was not abandoning her child, but she was taken to custody, and she was in prison. And in prison she got sick, and they didn't help her, so she died a month after that. So we have racism, of course, like in any other country. And I think something else that is usually, I think around the world, but I can see it clearly in South America, is that we have so many differences between economic classes. So if we have like the intersectionality, so if you are poor and you are Black and you're a woman, the chances that the government and the healthcare system are going to support you are very, very low. Because there's a lot of stereotypes going around, like, oh, then women from Haiti, they don't care about their children. I used to work in a health center, and that was the main thing that everyone was saying. Doctors, nurses, oh no, here comes another one. But we are not racist. So it's very important to acknowledge that we are, and not because we are from a minority in the US, that means that we are not racist. I think that's something that's very embodied in ourselves because we are Latinos, because we are a minority. And I think that happens to me also with the BMAE here, the BAME, because I'm a minority here, but it's because I came from my country to here. But that doesn't mean that when I'm in Chile, I'm immune to be racist, I'm immune to be sexist. Like, it is there. And I think something very important to say about South America, especially talking about Chile in this context, and Argentina as well, is that the majority of people from Chile are brown. You will say light brown or dark brown. the majority, but the minority are white, and those minorities are the ones that have the power of everything. So we have that very fixed. If you are high class, you're usually white, where we are not racist. So there is something there that is crossed with money, with your class and your ethnicity as well. If you look like an indigenous person, then oh my God, no. If you look more brown, I don't like that, but we are not racist. So I think something that is very important is that regarding to skin color, if I don't speak here, maybe people won't even notice I'm Latin. And something about race is that it's visible. You cannot hide it. You don't have to say anything. You don't need to prove if you have money or not. They already see you and they put you in a box. So that's something that we need to acknowledge as well, because when I came here for the first time, I thought people would instantly know that I was South American. But actually, no, actually I'm white. And then I started to also realize that in Chile, if you have money, you're usually white. So it has to do a lot with that, a lot about the beauty standards, a lot about how the economy works, not only about the opportunities. And I think that's something very important that also Nidia was saying in the beginning, is that we cannot equal things now. Like if we say, okay, from tomorrow, there's no racism, that doesn't erase everything that they have not get through centuries. So still, the money probably will belong to white men because that's generation after generation. Okay, we will have the same people in uni, but probably the schools they went to were different because also about that, because of poverty, and the color of the skin has a lot to do with that, at least in South America. And for example, some friends that I have from Brazil, they were doing a campaign about this is my hair, I love it, but don't touch it. Because there are like simple things that sometimes people do to Black people just because they think it's funny. So for example, in Brazil, a lot of women, they have this Afro hair and everybody wants to touch it. It's like, oh, like it's so cute, I like it. So they were doing a campaign because like, we are not your pets. Like I'm a human being, you're not like my boyfriend, my girlfriend, you're a random person in the streets that just believe that because you find my hair amusing, you can touch it. And in Brazil, there's a lot of campaigns about that because you also have different, like different amount of people in different regions have different skin colors. But it's something to do with, it's not the same to be Black than to be white. It's not the same to be a white woman that a white man. And of course, it's not the same to be a Black woman. And in the case of Joan, to be a Black woman that's poor and Spanish, and she didn't speak Spanish. So you have all of that against her. Nobody gave her any support. She was just condemned and went to prison and died, just because like that. And she's a name that, of course, is not known in the whole world because we are a small country in South America, but we are not exempt from racism. So that's a little bit what I wanted to talk about South America. And I know Jess is still here. I don't know if you want to comment a little bit on how sometimes racism is also enmeshed in our education, in how we are taught about medicine, law, psychology. So now go to you.
Hey, thank you, Fran. That was really, really interesting. And thanks everyone for sharing. Yeah, I would echo what a lot of you are saying, that we all need to do the work here. And it's kind of a shame that there's like not many Black people in here that I can see, but I know that it's been quite a tough time for Black people in general. There have even been more deaths since George Floyd, so I think it's just very overwhelming for a lot of people at the moment. So yeah, I'm the medical student at King's, and I think as Black people, we also forget that we need to do a lot of learning as well. So sometimes when that burden's put on us, there's things that we also don't know, and things that we don't recognize, or we didn't call out, or that we were complicit in as well. So what I didn't even realize is that with my 3 years at King's so far, I rarely see skin conditions on Black skin or brown skin. From George Floyd's death and the movement that has come since, really amazing things have been happening in terms of our medical school curriculum. We've signed petitions, we've written to the GMC, which is the General Medical Council, to make sure that we are seeing conditions on brown skin every single time that there is a white example, because we do need to see examples on both. We've also written a letter to faculty as part of the medical school as well. Some of us have been taught in sessions where we'd have a slideshow and the patient vignette will be like, okay, an African Caribbean patient comes to visit you today. This is what the rash looks like. And the picture will be white skin. And it just doesn't add up to the words that we're reading, and it's just not good enough. Also, some words like pallor and redness, these are not what you're going to see on black skin. Black people don't go pale, and they tend to go like purpley, not red. So it's just making sure that all of our teachers as well as our students are very aware of these sorts of things, and that they're constantly challenging them and asking questions, and just giving the people teaching us a bit more of a push to be inclusive, truly be inclusive, because I think it's really upsetting and also frustrating when you feel like you're an afterthought all the time. I also brought up some stats, like just to make sure that I got them correct, but I'm doing a lot of like learning and reading myself, and some of the medical stats that I saw were really, really shocking and uncomfortable. So for example, black women are 5 times more likely to die in childbirth than their white counterparts. Another one was that black people are 50% less likely to get pain relief compared to a white patient. So, and there's lots of background reasons for this. Medical students were actually surveyed, and they said things like black people have thicker skin, so they won't feel pain, or black people are just stronger mentally because they've been through slavery. There were crazy misconceptions and presumptions made by people who are going to be future doctors, surgeons, and healthcare professionals. So that's really been a worrying thing as well. And then obviously with COVID, we've now had Black and Asian minority ethnic people are disproportionately affected again. 95% of the doctors who died from COVID were brown or black, 95%. And that's not representative of the workforce, because there are a lot more white and Asian doctors than black doctors. And still, black and brown people were more likely to die from COVID. And it's just our healthcare system needs a lot of work. Like Fran said before, at this point, nobody's really exempt. I think it's unconscious and it's systemic. It's literally ingrained in our society. And I think the best thing for people to do right now is to educate themselves and share. Like, that's why Humans of KCL, you know, I've seen a lot of my friends sharing stories, a lot of people sharing stories on their racist experiences, or just their like medical school journeys, or things that patients came out and said to them that they didn't even know how to react to. And now I can direct them to Humans of KCL, because I think that would be really good for more people to see. But yeah, I think we need to be, I mean, the petitions going around and the letters going to faculty and all of this kind of stuff have been amazing. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say in terms of medical school. And just, I hope that across all specialties and subjects that more is being done. I think I saw a petition as well from the history department, where they're like trying to learn more about Black history and the true like England's colonial past as well. And they're trying to teach that at primary school. And I think from my point of view as well, I think it's starting to quieten down a little bit now. The movement can't be the BLM forever. It was inevitably going to quieten down. Social media will inevitably go back to normal, but the work still needs to be done. And there are people who are derailing it. It's not, you know, take every TV show down and nobody's allowed to ever, like, everybody's got to tread on eggshells around Black people. That's not what we want at all. We just want people to think about how every single action that they make, or the things that they say, the microaggressions like some of you spoke about, the littlest things contribute to a very, very wider problem. One last shocking story was that we had a cultural competency workshops that we have as medical students to learn more about cultures and backgrounds and ethnicities. And we started off with like easy questions like, what's your favorite food? How are you feeling today? And I don't know if any of you have used PollEV, where they ask you to enter a link on your phone and then you put in answers and they come up on the slideshow that the lecturer's using. So they were like, okay, white people, and people put, like, it was very positive. It was like professional, friendly. Okay, you had some inappropriate stereotypes like can't dance or things like that. But overall, the consensus was that white people, it was a positive. Then we had Asian people, and a couple of stereotypes came out again, you know, good at science and maths, quiet, doctors, lawyers, that sort of stuff. And then it came to black people, and people said scary, people said criminal, and these are going to be future doctors. And there was no follow-up. And I think that's an issue that King's has, that's an issue that many institutions have, that's an issue our own government has, that there is never follow-up. These things can't be allowed to continue, because then we have issues where patients, black patients, are 5 times more likely to die from having a child. That should never, ever be the case. And I think follow-up, having escalation forms, our uni didn't even have a racism reporting form until literally last week, because we wrote them a letter to get one. Like, where is it? What about students who experience inappropriate stuff on placement? What if we see something on placement that we think's not right? Who do we go and talk to? So yeah, I think having a lot more of those in place, and writing letters seems to really work well, and just carry on the momentum, really. Yeah,
it seems unbelievable that if you are attempting to hear the opinions of your students and you are asking questions like that, of course the stereotypes are going to come in. Like, that's a way that we aggregate the world, so it's going to come. But if you have strong words like criminal or scary, and then there's nothing after, then you just, okay, so first, I don't know why I think like that, and then the other ones, okay, so who said that?
Yeah.
Am I a threat to you? Like, there's no conversation of like, okay, we can understand why you think like that, but okay, let's deconstruct that here.
Yeah, which is why events like this are really good, because obviously there needs to be some sort of safe space where people who do have these inner, maybe negative thoughts, and it may be rooted in experiences where, I don't know, they may have been mugged by a black man. They may have seen their dad beaten up by a black man. Like, we don't know people's experiences, but we need to dismantle it. We need to talk to them about it, because there's people who are black and not scary, and who are black and not criminals. And it does affect lives. And I think that's when we need to like draw the line. Yeah,
I completely understand. Like, from a psychologist's point of view, like, well, I'm a clinical psychologist, I'm studying IUPEV in King's. And the same happens in the NHS. So for example, it's more likely that black kids go into care than a white kid, even if the proportion is not accurate. It's also more likely for black kids to have like their concern dismissed in the beginning, and then after it's like they go to it's not serious to it's very serious. They don't have like the same amount of like second tier, I think that's the name. So there's also the stigmatization as well, like, oh, but it's black, so probably they have a lot of problems and issues at home. Maybe they're more angry. So that's their lifestyle. So we shouldn't think about it.
Yeah. Can I add something from the psychology area? Psychology itself is actually really also rooted in racism. There was a psychologist called Lombroso. Franny, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he basically came up with criminal profiling. This was in like the 19th century, late 19th century. He came up with criminal profiling, and it was basically mapping the features of a criminal onto the stereotypical black facial characteristics. And also from this idea stemmed the idea of being born a criminal, and it's really completely rooted in racism. So and as Franny is saying, it's still reflected in the way mental health professionals treat people of colour. I mean, I don't have the exact statistics to hand, but we have very similar statistics in the way that people are treated in our services, and also seen in the public, and in terms of our attitudes towards those with severe mental illnesses. You know, those traits of like dangerousness and you know, being like a danger to society. You know, there's like so much stigma against people of colour, when actually anyone with a mental illness is actually more likely to harm themselves than anyone else. So yeah, just from a psychology point of view, we definitely have a lot of work to do as well. But yeah, just thought I would add.
Yeah, thank you, Grace. There's a hand of Recon. I don't know who's behind the name. Hello?
So I'm a law student, and I just wanted to, because we were talking a little bit about different departments and how they deal with these things. And like, it's just very obvious sometimes that the way that we're taught about legal history is so whitewashed. Like, one of the first things that they tell us in first year is like, the English legal system is a common law legal system, and the common law legal system is great because it's so flexible and it's so business friendly. And this is why it's everywhere in the world, because it's so flexible, and we like, and from a business, like from a commercial perspective, that's what businesses want to operate in. And I think, you know, they really ignore like the reason that the common law system has had a huge influence in Asia, in Africa, the reason the civil law system is like the backbone of many of the laws, particularly in North Africa and in the Maghreb area, is actually just rooted in colonialism. And that's something that gets completely ignored. And I did try to bring it up in a seminar once. They were like, why is it so common? And I was like, well, I know what answers everybody else is going to give, but like, I feel like this is a valid thing to share as well, because we shouldn't just ignore like the source of these things and the impact that, you know, the laws that were imported over into the different communities have had. There's a lot of old French colonial laws in North Africa that, you know, are still maintained to this day, like old laws about in certain countries in the Maghreb, you know, if a woman gets raped, the rapist doesn't have to go to jail if he marries her. Right now, this is something that has been completely like taken over by some very extreme like religious fundamentalists, but actually the root is in French colonialism, and nobody recognizes this. And so that's something that the law department doesn't really, hasn't engaged that much with. And then this year as well, I did public international law as a module. And one of the things that they tell us is, you know, how do you acquire territory, the title to territory? And one of the concepts is called terra nullius, which means that there is no, like, nobody has the title to that territory, so anybody can come in, occupy the territory, and then like it's theirs. And actually, and that's how they presented it. But I know from like my own research that actually, again, it's an imperialist colonialist thing, where basically what they did was, in order to justify expansion into Africa, expansion into the Americas, you know, outside of like the economic justification on a more moral level, it's not that it's moral, but one of the things that they said was that, you know, these people, they're not Christian, they're savages, therefore they can't have sovereignty over their own land, therefore the land is terra nullius, therefore we have the rights to go in, and we have the right to enslave people, and we have the rights to to take over and set up our own settlements in these countries. And again, like, it's just completely ignored. And at the beginning of the module, they were telling us about all of these different approaches that you can have to international law, and one of them is called TWAIL, which stands for like third world analysis, which is basically about sort of looking at new colonialism in the legal system and the colonial and imperial origins of the international law system. And they kind of just throw that in at the beginning of the year, and they never come back to it. And then they ignore it in these key concepts that can be criticized, like you know, in their very origin and their use as being imperialist, and it's just something that they haven't really engaged with, and that I don't really know how to get them to engage with either.
I think from my experience, a lot of people have been doing petitions, decolonize the curriculum or their particular curriculum. Although I'm not asking you to, you know, go out and do a major petition, I definitely think jot down these sorts of things, like keep a Word document or a notebook, because they do need to be raised. And I think you need to be like, email your head of department, or just make sure that you're telling someone, because I think there will be someone in the faculty who will take it up and make a change. I mean, maybe I'm being naive, but like, if you get more people as well, maybe to co-sign it or something like that, like maybe get a letter together, it might strengthen it. I don't know if anyone has any other advice.
I know, Zoe, you have your hand up. I don't know if you have a comment or...
Yeah, I had one comment, and then now I've got another one as well. But I think it's interesting on the terra nullius point, because I'm from Australia, and so that's often used quite heavy in our curriculum and education. And it's quite interesting because so Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, so the Indigenous populations of Australia, are still not recognised in our constitution, and it comes back to this concept of terra nullius. No one was here, so it's our land to sort of own and take over, and things like that. And it's very rarely recognised how all of this sort of comes in, and it's what enabled Australia right up until the 1970s. So like living memory, people in positions of power at the moment, living working life memory, that we had a policy called the White Australia policy, and all of our immigration policies and a lot of things was all about how do we keep Australia white, which is just ridiculous because it completely ignores Aboriginal people who were here for hundreds and thousands of years before white people came from England. And I think it's also interesting when you start comparing Australia and New Zealand, and I know they're very different in terms of their Indigenous populations, but New Zealand was never declared terra nullius, and so it doesn't have that same legal issues that Australia has around it. And I always think that there needs to be more discussion about that, and going back to kind of, well, deconstructing those things and thinking about how they're impacting right now and the decisions we're making, and kind of that living memory and how things get passed on and all of that. And I don't think there is enough of that sort of deconstructing why we're using these terms and things like that. So that was just the second point to build on. Is it Recon? Am I saying your name right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a nickname. So.
Okay. And then the original comment I had, and that was for Jessica, and I just wondered about the sort of, I am vaguely aware of the letter you referred to just through my work with Folsom Development, Diversity and Inclusion team and stuff like that. And I kind of just had this sort of thought about how much you think the progress you've made over the last couple of weeks is because you've been able to push the kind of reactive point about all of this Black Lives Matter, and so you're able to push points forward to make sure you're getting an immediate reaction to address problems, and how we can kind of keep that momentum and keep that kind of drive to immediately react to change problems that are raised, as some of the kind of momentum will inevitably die down a little bit, because we just can't, because it's social media and it's sort of what happens, and how we can keep that kind of immediate reaction change going on kind of outside this current moment, to make sure we are still making all those changes that are needed.
Yeah, it's really difficult, because I think that Black students right now, they've like taken advantage of the moment. It's the moment that everybody's listening, because Black people are screaming about it. Everybody on social media has seen about the BLM. There is no way to escape it. And I think it's been a really good time to hop on and like get all your feelings out. All of the letters are coming into faculty. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, we need to make change. But how much of it is actually long term? In terms of the med school, and just my advice in general is to work with people who are already doing the work. So like, for example, the diversity and inclusion teams, and there's student societies like African Caribbean Society and African Caribbean Medical Society, who literally are formed as a safe space for Black students who do this work every day throughout the year. So partnering up with societies and organizations that have been put in place to actually do this work, and giving them the tools to do so. So I know for the medical school, African Caribbean Medical Society has a big membership of Black students. It's literally our safe space to talk to each other about things, to raise things like, oh, you know, didn't see any skin color for my first 3 years of med school. That's a problem. How do I help the younger years then bring that up? How do I also bring it up? And I know that the dean of our medical school has gone to speak to the society. They've worked out ways that they're going to keep this a long-term thing. Are they going to meet once a month? Is it going to be email correspondence? Are things going to be put in place now and trialed for the academic year? And if they don't go wrong, what's going to happen? So we've worked, so the society's partnered up with our MSA as well, which is our Medical School Association. They basically represent all med students, and then ACMS is now giving that extra push for Black students because of what's been going on and everything like that. And we've got obviously like our reporting form. If it doesn't go right, we know who's going to talk to who. We know, we're just trying to form like long-term partnerships. And I think utilizing the societies and organizations that are already doing the work, or who are there for that, giving them the tools to do so, and encouraging other people, giving them attention so other people can gravitate towards them. So we've had people who are not Black, for example, wanting to know a bit more about ACMS, reaching out to us for our thoughts on certain things. And that's all that we kind of wanted. You know, if there's a comedy review, which is what the medical students do every year, if there's going to be racial jokes in it, have a chat with us, talk to people who may find it offensive so you don't cause the offense. And yeah, I think that's the start, and it's just maintaining that and having a like schedule where, you know, we're going to talk every month, or we're going to have actionable points that we're going to work on throughout the year, and actually evaluate at the end if change has been made. So it's not just a now thing, it's a long-term thing.
Yeah, I think that's very important, that it's not something that is going to be fixed tomorrow, or something that needs a lot more working. Nafisa, you had your hand up, and I think then Grace has a comment as well.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh,
sorry, you go. I can't put my hand up or anything.
Okay.
I don't have the right thing, so.
Okay, so you go after Nafisa.
I'll go next.
Okay. It's on a comment that Jessica made earlier, which was that there are changes happening. So there have been changes that have happened in the past 2-3 weeks, because it has given you the opportunity, because of the tragic loss of George Floyd, and this feeling that this one incident has caused, or has given the opportunity to shout, scream, raise awareness all over social media and on the different platforms we have. But that shouldn't be the case. Why do we have to wait for a tragedy to happen to raise this awareness? That's, I mean, in some sense, it's a positive thing. I mean, I'm not saying that their loss is positive, but I mean that the changes that are happening are positive. But we need to start making these changes without a tragic event. And perhaps if we do start making those changes, there won't be as many tragic events as there are right now. And we need to start self-reflecting and having those discussions, that because the momentum is here right now, that doesn't mean that this work has to stop. Like you said, it has to continue. A huge loss has happened previously. It cannot go on. We need to keep talking about it. We need to keep going on. Like institutions, universities cannot just talk about it right now and then, okay, we addressed it, let's go away and continue the way we were. No, it has to continue in a similar or same rate. So I think that's one thing that I thought that it really is necessary to mention and say, that let's not wait for another tragedy to happen. Let's continue, let's keep going on.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention one phrase that was mentioned by a Black activist from the US regarding these issues. He was saying that we have an illusion that we have made a lot of progress in the past, but we are one tragic incident, like we are just one tragic incident to go back to the point zero. Because that's always the tension, like you have a tragic incident, people get angry, people get to the streets, some changes are made, but very small changes, of course, not to this whole structure, but of course politicians will say, oh, but we changed that. And then everything like reached plateau again, and then something else happened, you feel we haven't made any progress, and then, so it's like a pattern happening. Yeah, I agree with Nafisa about that.
Yeah, I 100% agree as well. And it's one of those things that we've also always been saying, like every single discussion we have, the work must continue. I think Black people might think it's a bit different this time because I've never seen such an like people are for the first time, or maybe they've been doing it all along, but people are actually educating themselves on racism. And when you speak to Black people, like deaths of Black people have been happening in America for years. But George Floyd, because of the knee on his neck, I didn't even watch the whole video because I didn't want to, but just that in itself, I think that shocked even the most racist person. That shook them to their core. And I think it's a horrible thing that had to happen, the fact that he was martyred in that way. But it's the time where people are listening. And actually, I've even seen other things now coming to light. The real atrocities going on in the world, not just with Black people, but in Yemen and Palestine. And I'm educating myself on all of these things and like making sure that I'm also ensuring that stuff like this that shouldn't be happening in the world that we live in today doesn't continue as well. So yeah, we just need to keep doing what we're doing and talking about it and acting when we can.
Yeah. Grace?
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to add in terms of like support groups. There's actually one that's run through the IOPPN, the Institute of Psychology, and it's running every Thursday from 3 till 5 p.m.
Yeah.
It's called Black Students Talk. It's on Zoom. You don't need to sign up in advance or anything like that, and it's basically one-to-one or group discussions using like actual trained facilitators and like psychoeducation. Also, it can signpost students to like the correct mental health services and with speakers from Black mental health organisations. And it was started up by a King's MSc student because he was struggling with his experience of racism. So if you want to pass it on, then you just email hello@blackpeopletalk.co.uk. And it's every Thursday 3 till 5 p.m. So that could be a really useful resource for people that are struggling at the moment, if you guys want to spread that around. We got emailed it through the IOPPN, but I don't know how far they've spread it, but it sounds really great.
I sent Fran the PDF poster because I saw about this too. I sent it to you on WhatsApp. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Grace.
It's open
to share the initiatives. Zoe?
Oh, sorry, it's open to all students at King's, and it's being facilitated by a Black man and a Black woman. So there's the gender perspectives there as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a little something extra about the psychology, because I talk a little bit about how, like, if you are the client, if you are the patient, sometimes because of the skin, the color of your skin, you will be treated differently. But it also happens to the practitioners. It usually happens that, at least in the UK, you will have more white practitioners, psychologists, and therapists than black. And so it's normally what happens is a dynamic where the white practitioners feel that they cannot address race because that's something that the black practitioner has to do, not because it's like their job, it's because they are afraid to be racist. So if they, for example, have a client, they have a family, and there's two people working at the same time, so they're doing co-therapy, and you have a white man and a black woman or any gender, the white person wouldn't feel comfortable to address the issue of race. So I was reading a book yesterday when they explained one of the situations. So he didn't address it because he thought it would be rude if I do it, because race is her issue, not because she's black, but because she has suffered more. So I'm white, like I have nothing to say about this. And she didn't say anything because she was feeling, why should I always have to bring this? Like, why every time you are struggling with a black patient, you need to give it to me, like nobody else can do anything. So then she explained to the whole group, like after the session, that she was feeling so overwhelmed and so angry that they thought that her responsibility was to address the whole race for the whole team, and they couldn't share that responsibility, that it was from all of them. Of course, it's going to come from different perspectives. You're not going to say I'm black if you're not, but that doesn't mean I don't have a race. I don't have any knowledge. And I think that's something very important that sometimes is missing in the training. We had one class about that, I remember. And in my class, almost everyone was white. There was one Asian, one black, and me that was Latino. Everybody else was white. And I remember the presenter, he was brown, and he was saying, okay, I'm brown. And usually when I give this talk, the students that are white get upset. And actually that happened. And that happened because he was talking about race. And we all, and I do believe this, we all as human beings have experienced moments when we feel discriminated, either by race, gender, your likes, disability, your accent, everything. But they are not visible usually. And I think that's something very important about the skin color and about some religions, that is visible. So they were feeling very undermined, like, so I cannot complain because I'm not black. So it was like a big discussion that I don't believe it was addressed the best way, but that just, like, we cannot have a discussion when somebody says to the other, what you're suffering is not valid. It is valid, but we are not talking about you as a person. Like, I can say I'm not racist, and I can have no problem to talking to people from any race, any religion, any gender. But this is something more than that. This is something structural. This is something institutional. So if you are a good person and you're not racist, that's not enough. And I think that's something that it was also been said, that it's not to be only not racist, it's anti-racist, and to acknowledge the position that we are occupying for the families as well when we are seeing patients. Also, that will happen for you and the medical students. If they see somebody with some skin color, they will have some assumptions, and we need to address them. And the person in the position of power has to address them. We cannot expect that the one that feels oppressed says, hello, I feel oppressed, change. It has to be the person of power. Sometimes it will be the white person. Sometimes it will be the white psychologist or the white doctor. But we cannot rely on the victims of the people that feel oppressive. They will say, I feel that. It can happen, but it needs so much strength and courage and energy. And we can do much more just by asking. And I think that's something very important. I want to open to more comments, but I wanted to read 8 points that the activist DeRay McKinson from the US explains on how to be an ally. And after that, whatever comment or question you have, we will have an open discussion about that. So he's from the US, he's a Black activist, and he pulled together 8 points that he feels people that are white should have into consideration when they think that we want to become allies. And that's why we need more allies as well. So the first one is own your privilege. So in this case, I would say own our privilege as white people. and to use this white privilege to end white privilege. I think that's something that I've also been seeing a lot in the science, because if we have the power, we can change that as well. We can move for that. And also to ask to the Black community, what is the help that you need? And not only assume that what we are doing is enough or what we're doing is the best thing if we don't even talk to them. Like, we are not two different groups collaborating, we need to collaborate together to end white privilege. The second, talk about what's uncomfortable and what's important. I have heard a lot, especially from white men, saying that they feel they cannot participate in conversations like this, and we don't have any white men right now. There are some in the live Instagram, because they feel that they cannot say anything because everything that they say could be used against them. And I think it's important that we take that risk, of course, in a safe environment, but we need to take that risk and ask questions and talk and share and say, we don't know, we are learning. Because you cannot change what you don't talk about. 3, be strategic in what you say and how you say it. Like, of course, respect is something super important. We cannot just say whatever we want, being aggressive and rude, and expect people to just tolerate it. 4, activism isn't just about protests and marches. It means also voting. He was referring to that because he says, like, for example, people will go to the protest, but then they will accept fundings from a white supremacist for something. So it's the thing of trying to be more coherent. 5, figure out where and how you can do the most good. So what is your role? Like, are you a student? You can help because you're a student. Are you a professor? Then you can help there. Then start where you are. I think that's something super important. Because, like I was saying in the beginning, sometimes we have the feeling that only if we are super prepared, then we can make a change. And we can start today by watching a documentary or asking one of our friends how they're feeling. We don't need to be experts before to take action. And he also mentions that concrete small steps, like listen or asking a question, can be very, very important. And
Fran?
Yes?
Just to double check, if the Instagram live is still running.
Yeah, it just stopped and I'm putting it again.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm. So let me go there. Yeah, it's because okay, it's going now.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome. So the last 2, ask yourself, what do I want the future to look like? And that's something that now Jess was addressing as well. And I think all of us, like, we don't need only to ask, okay, there's some tragedy, we need to repair. We also need to think how to change this. And he usually addresses more about the police system in the US. Like, we cannot just say, okay, somebody did something wrong, let's go to prison. Like, we cannot only punish, we need to change how the system works so that doesn't happen that often, or hopefully never happens again. And the last one, feel the fear and act anyway. Because this is a process that is going to take a lot of discomfort. We are not going to feel in our best. We are not going to feel experts. We are going to feel vulnerable, overwhelmed, but we need to act anyways, because this is something that it has been happening for so long and we cannot be blind to it. So those was the ones. I think one was lost and it was start where you are. And I think that's the most important message that I want to leave. I know that today we had, so we have people from different racial backgrounds, and I do like that because, like I was saying during the talk, it's not the responsibility of only the Black community to, like, teach us how racism is like, but of course it's their moment to share their experiences. And even though we all experience some discrimination, race is something that goes beyond that. It crosses cultures, it crosses languages. So it's very important to also give them the space when they want and how they want to express how they feel and how can we help. So I just want to open for last comments or questions if anybody has one. And of course, thank, and again, all of you for giving us your time to explain your knowledge, and just like Freya was saying, create a community that can support each other, and we can even improve ideas and create something more after this. We talked a lot about the Humans for Kings also. I think everybody's excited about that, so you will have more followers. Yeah, so it's open to you if you want to discuss anything more.
Thank you for doing this, Fran. It was really, really good.
I'm glad that
That's my comment.
Your space to talk about medicine. Yeah.
Huh?
I'm glad that you could have this space to talk about what's happening in med school as well.
Oh, thank you.
No, I would just like to say a massive thank you to everybody. I know it's been a sensitive subject and something that, you know, we really wanted to facilitate and give people an opportunity to really engage in these supporting communities. And like I've said, like by bringing different people in from different places, I think it really shows the direction in which Kings can be heading. And I think it's really reassuring that, you know, we as a population can be really powerful in our movement. And I think we should all feel empowered by listening to one another and knowing what resources are out there, and then, you know, making it better and improving it again. So from me, a massive thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it.
I just wanted to say one phrase that George Floyd's daughter said last week. So she's very young, as you may know, and she said that my daddy changed the world. And I think, yeah, he's doing that. But I also take the words of everyone here that nobody else should die so we can change the world. We can change the world being like together and protesting and talking to our professors about the curriculum. Like nobody else has to die so a little girl can say that her father will be a martyr again. We have too many of them. And in every culture, not only the Black community, but of course it has been strengthened the most. Yeah. So thank you again. Just remind you of some of the initiatives that were told today. We have Abby with her book club regarding racism. And her Instagram was YC227. So if anybody wants to join, they are doing a book club just to learn from themselves, to then have an open conversation about it. Also Humans from Kings, they are also receiving experiences. It can be anonymous, you can put your name on that, and you can contact them on Instagram or in the email KCLHumans.
KCLHumans@gmail.com, yeah.
Yes. And also the initiative of Black Student Talk. They are going to start the 18th of June, but it's going to be something weekly from 3 to 5. Just have to write to hello@blackpeopletalk.co.uk, and you can participate from any student from King's can participate there. And it's something made by and for Black students. And I also invite you to our next talk next Tuesday, and it's going to be about the LGBTB+ community, because June is the Pride Month. So if you want to participate, observing, asking questions, or sharing your experience and knowledge, please contact us in King's RESILIFE Instagram. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Fran.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.